In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to work with basic selection tools, which are Marquee tool and Lasso tool. Of course, you can see all of your tools on the left side, and I believe you were looking at them before, and there's no point to point you every single tool. But if I'm going to show you the most important tool which you're going to use, naturally you're going to experiment with others and your work will become much more fluent than in the way you would know every single tool without knowledge how to use them. So in this case, I'm just going to start with Marquee tool, and you have few different kind of Marquee tool. You have rectangular Marquee tool, elliptical Marquee tool, single row Marquee tool, and single column Marquee tool. As you can see, they are quite similar, only one difference between them is the shape. I'm going to choose elliptical Marquee tool because I believe that's the shape that you're going to use the most. Probably this will be elliptical Marquee tool and rectangular Marquee tool. So let's start with elliptical Marquee tool. And what you can see on the top, you can choose different kind of selection. You can choose the single selection. So when you're going to select some point, you can only do this once. And then every time you're going to create new selection, the previous one is going to disappear. The other option is you can create multiple selection. For example, if you want to select two similar points and you want to cut them out, you can create more selection than one. Also, except that, you have third option, which is going to cover one selection into another. And you can notice this, how it's going to cut out when you creating selections. Also, the last option will be very similar to the third one, and you can see really small difference. It cuts opposite area to this previous one. The last two you're going to not use so often, but mostly you're going to use first one and sometimes the second one. I'm going to start with the first option, and next thing you have feather. By feather, as you already know, you can set up the dissolve on the edge. I'm going to start with feather 0 to show you. So I'm going to create a simple selection, and what I can do when I select the image, first of all, I can cut this out. When you hit right, you have two options, layer via copy and also a layer via cut. What I do recommend is use as much as we can layer via copy, so it will be non-destructive for our previous layer and we'll simply cut out this object. If you want to make this a bit more softened, we can change the feather into a very soft one, maybe over 100, because it's quite a big image. I'm going to do a selection, and right now I'm going to use layer via copy once again, and as you can see, our edge is very soft over here. So that's the first use of selection tool. Let's go back now. Other thing you can do, I'm going to pull down the feather because I don't want this so strong really, and I'm going to create new layer. Let's create a selection once again. The other thing you can create when you created a selection, for example, you can choose a brush and you can paint inside with the color you choose. And as you can see, you're going to paint only in the area you already selected. If you want to make a selection everything else except that point, I would recommend you to not try to do a selection of this area, but when you do this selection, you can just hit right and choose select inverse. So now this area is not selected, but this area around is selected. So now when I'm going to paint, as you can see, I'm not going to affect the thing inside, but everything what is around. Let's go back and choose some of the different possibilities it's going to give us. I'm going to remove this layer number 1, and let's say I'm going to create fill layer on the top. It can be this yellow color. And on this layer, I'm going to create a selection somewhere here, because for example, we just want to keep the image in the circle. So this time, instead of cutting, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit this layer mask, and then I'm going to invert this area. As you remember, when we invert and the layer mask become dark, the area become invisible. So this yellow color become invisible, but the fact is we have selected specific area, so only this area inside going to become invisible. I'm going to press Ctrl or Command and I, and as you can see, we keep this invisible. Of course, when we're going to hit right and to select inverse, and then when we're going to invert this, everything else become invisible. So that's how it works. Also, when you're going to change the feather, you can get the same result. I'm going to set feather as a very strong. Let's have a look. I'm just going to invert this, and now my edges are really soft. So that's the first option you can use it for. But okay, let's remove this, and I'm going to create other adjustment layer, for example, curves. And what I want to do everything around a bit darken, but I want to keep everything inside the same. So my idea is, I'm just going to remove this once again. Curves, okay. So my idea is, I'm going to drag it down to make everything a bit darker, and I'm going to create a selection, and then I'm going to invert this. And what you can notice, everything around is darkened, but the main point is brightened. Of course, right now we can manipulate the strength of it into the reasonable level, and that's how it looks like. So as you can see, you have endless possibilities if it's all about adjustment layers. Let's create solid color once again. Let's do a selection. And this time, what I want to do, maybe I would like to make everything darken. So I'm going to create new layer, let it be curve layer. And when I'm going to pull it up, as you can see, the selected area become brightened. At this level, I believe I gave you really a lot of information how you can use selection tools. I'm going to remove this all, and a bit different things is with lasso tool. We could say they are a bit more precise. Marquee tool are very strict, but let's choose lasso tool. You're not going to use this for professional selection, but you can do really interesting shapes if you want to do. It gives you much more option than the previous option. The feather is at 50 something at the moment. I didn't change this. So what you can notice, I'm going to choose curves, and when I'm going to pull this up, we're going to brighten up this specific area. I think I don't have to tell you much about this, because it was very easy example how lasso tool works. And we have few really interesting options. For a bit more precise selection, I usually use polygonal lasso tool. Let's zoom this in. For example, we want to select edges in the really nice way. So we can choose this tool to do this. I wouldn't recommend this at the beginning, and I have to say I'm not using this still that often, and I'm going to show you a better example, but still I know many people is using this and find this comfortable. Let's do a selection, and for example I'm going to copy this area from this background layer. I'm going to hit right, layer via copy, and as you can see I copied a specific area that I wanted to. So okay, that's how it works. Also, the other option that is not really professional is magnetic lasso tool. As you can see, it finds, we just can hit right and then it finds our edges. What you can notice, it's really precise in the way how we work. It really easily finds the edges. We need to do a selection, but sometimes when it's darken areas, it can get lost. But still, if you have simple edges, it can be very helpful for you. Let's hit right and layer via copy. Once again, of course, I need to this background layer selected, layer via copy. So these tools are much more precise than the first one, but all of these I count as a very basic selection tool in Photoshop.